All right, we're going to transition now to two religious systems, perhaps better known as philosophic systems, and I'll explain that in a moment. And these are Taoism and Confucianism. The reason that we study them together is because even though they have their own distinctions, they are very, very similar in their approach. Uh, we studied Hinduism and noted that Buddhism came out of Hinduism. That's not the case with Taoism and Confucianism. One didn't originate and then the other follow, but they have kind of existed side by side and have a lot in common. Now, you may have seen the word Taoism spelt with a D, Taoism, and it's the same system, the same teaching. It's just that the way that the Chinese is used, the form of Chinese that's used to spell it, does bring about a variation. So whether you call it Taoism or Taoism, you're referring to the same teaching, same idea. Um, Taoism comes from the word Tao, which is a Chinese word meaning the way. And that's the essential concept. So when we talk about Taoism, we're talking about the way. Now, interesting. When we talk about Christianity, remember that in the book of Acts, the early church was known as the Way by others around it that referred to it more than any other title. The idea of church, the word that we use today, came about later on. It was actually borrowed from the word ecclesia, which was very common in the Greek world. But the church was known as the Way. Interestingly, Taoism is based on the idea of the Tao, which means the way. And of course, the question that we're asking here is, what do they mean by the way? What is the way, and to where does it lead? So let's look at the Tao. Now, you have probably seen this symbol many, many times. It's what we call the yin yang, and there's a point of darkness in the light area, and there's a point of light in the dark area, and there's a very specific reason for that that we'll look at in just a moment. But the idea is that the world began with the Tao. Okay, now at the beginning of everything, at the beginning of the beginning, there was this thing called the Tao. Now, remember the Bible says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So the Bible teaches that in the beginning, there was God himself, okay? Jesus Christ, the Son, God the Father, the Word was with God, the Word was God. So even the idea of the Trinity is there. But that's not what Taoism means by the Tao, okay? They would say that chaos emerged from nothing. In other words, there was nothing at all, and then all of a sudden, out of that nothingness came chaos, all right? Now, we believe that God created the universe ex nihilo, out of nothing. But God existed. But the Tao religion would say that there was nothing at all, and then all of a sudden, out of that nothingness came chaos. All right? Now, that's it's very difficult to wrap your mind around. But think for a moment about the teaching of evolution. Evolution tells us that, there was some explosion that came about. There was this chaotic beginning that eventually evolved into the order that we see in our universe today. Okay, so there are some parallels even between those ways of thinking. But chaos emerged out of nothing, and then yin yang developed as two balancing forces. So you have this Tao idea, which is this whatever it is, and even a Taoist really can't explain to you what it was. And out of this, whatever it was, this nothingness, came chaos. And then that chaos began to work in order to bring about a balance of opposites, of opposing ideas. And that's where the yin-yang theory comes in. And this is not a dualism. Dualism says there's a good force and an evil force. But the Taoism does not view the yin yang as good versus evil, moral versus immoral, okay, right versus wrong. No, they see it more as cause and effect, related ideas that are neither right nor wrong. They have no moral significance at all, but both are necessary in order to maintain balance. Just like we would say, in order to have electricity, you have to have both a positive charge and the negative, or in order to, to have the globe and a compass, you have to have the North Pole and the South Pole. They would say that you have to have both sides in order to create balance. That's the idea of the Tao. So it's not good or evil, but balance or imbalance. Now, one of the main teachings of Taoism today, and you can see a website on that, I'll make that a little bigger in case you want to copy that down. One of the main ideas here is that the secret of living, the secret of existing, is to be and let be. Don't try to change the way things are, because in doing so, you will only upset the delicate balance of the Tao, of yin yang. And in order for that balance between contrary ideas to happen, in order for that balance to become a reality, everybody and everything just has to simply become passive and let things happen. And if we'll just be passive and allow things to be, then eventually that imbalance will disappear and perfect balance will come about. All right. So Taoism, in that sense, is very much a passive idea. Don't try to change yourself. Don't try to change other people. Don't try to change society. You see, let everything just go, and the balance will happen. And of course, a question that you and I would ask immediately is, what would compel that balance? What would encourage it to happen? What motivation would there be there? It's kind of the question you need to ask in evolution. Evolution talks about the survival of the fittest, and improvement of species over time. Well, if everything started from this goo or this big bang, what was there in that goo that served as a motivation to become something or to improve or to develop? See, that's a question that really that really cannot be answered. And evolutionists have no answer. Now, we're not talking evolution here. We're talking about Taoism, but you have a similar problem. What would motivate or encourage or stimulate, total passivity to create a balance? We believe in what we call the second law of thermodynamics, which says everything left to itself ends up becoming disorderly and confusing. Don't make your bed. Don't clean your room for a few weeks and watch what happens. Just let it go. Let it be whatever it's going to be. Don't mess with your lawn. Don't weed your garden. Just let everything go. And the second law of thermodynamics says you do that and you're going to have trouble. But Taoism says no. Even though it appears that way, if you just let it go, eventually the balance will happen. Okay. Now, there are a lot of ways that the yin yang has been described. Many would say that Confucianism, the other one that we're going to study along with Taoism, is actually more the yang side, because Confucianism tends to be a little bit more progressive and proactive, whereas the Taoism is the more yin side, it just lets things go. So the yang side is masculine and the yin side is feminine. And you see positive and negative. You see summer and winter. You see day and night, light and dark, dry and wet, hot and cold, vibrant and faded, solid and flexibility, hard and soft, energetic and calm, loud and quiet, life and death. Again, in the Taoist way of thinking, these are not good or bad, moral or immoral ideas. These are complementary ideas, both of which must exist. So if you get sick, if you want to really take Taoism to its ultimate conclusion, don't worry about getting better, because sickness has to exist alongside of and in conjunction with health. just as life has to exist in conjunction with death. So sickness is not a bad thing. It's just part of the factors that create balance in the system. I mean, it's really one of the things that Taoism does that's very negative is it completely relieves you of personal responsibility. In fact, it discourages personal responsibility. The only thing you're really responsible for is to make sure you don't try to change anything. And so, be who you are. And you could almost identify elements of that even in the moral revolution today, where nobody can tell you who you are. You don't have to struggle with that. Whatever you feel like you are today, you are. If you change your mind about that tomorrow, you have every right to do that. Just let yourself be who you are. Now, there's a whole lot more to it than just that. There's the whole idea of the ego wanting autonomy and independence. But Taoism is dangerous and at the same time very attractive because it relieves people who follow of personal responsibility. All right. Both Confucianism and Taoism really are, in a sense, more philosophical than they are religious. Even though we study them as non-Christian religions because they contain certain elements of religion, many would say that at their core they're more philosophical. And the reason for that is because neither one of them acknowledges a personal God, a living creator God. Really, they're very humanistic religions. Both Confucianism and Taoism exalt, man and who he is, and leaves the idea of deism or a theist idea out of the picture. And so again, there are religious concepts within them, so we do include them in our study, but they are very humanist philosophies at their core. All right, we're going to come back in just a bit and talk a little bit more about Confucianism and see how it relates to Taoism, but that at least gives us an idea of what we're up against when we're dealing with someone who believes in total passivity in order to create the balance that everybody desires.